My name is Lorraine. I'm 54 years old, and I thought I was just stopping by to water my son's plants while he was supposedly on a business trip. Instead, I just discovered my son is living a double life. Standing at the back door of my son Mitchell's country house in rural Pennsylvania, my hand trembled on the doorknob. Through the kitchen window, I could see him clearly, but the woman beside him wasn't his wife Brenda. This stranger was visibly pregnant, wearing Brenda's apron, cooking in Brenda's kitchen like she belonged there. I froze, the key still in the lock, my heart hammering against my ribs. Then the woman turned, and recognition hit me like a freight train. Simone, Mitchell's college girlfriend from 10 years ago. Before we dive deeper into this nightmare, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. If you've ever discovered a secret that changed everything, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, this story gets much darker than I ever imagined possible. My life used to make sense. 3 years ago, my husband Roger died suddenly from a heart attack at 58, leaving me alone in our Philadelphia row house with nothing but memories and mortgage payments. As an accountant, I'd always been good with numbers, with things that balanced and made logical sense. My only child, my golden boy, the one thing Roger and I got absolutely right. Mitchell had always been exceptional. Straight A's through high school, full scholarship to Penn, then Wharton for his MBA. By 30, head-made partner at a prestigious investment firm. When he married Brenda 5 years ago, I watched from the church pew as my son pledged his life to this polished, poised woman from a wealthy Connecticut family. The wedding cost more than my first house, with 300 guests, an orchestra, and champagne that cost $50 a glass. Brenda glided down the aisle in a custom Vera Wang gown, looking like Shed stepped out of a bridal magazine. I remember thinking Roger would have been so proud, even though the whole affair made me slightly uncomfortable with its excess. Brenda came from money, the kind of old family wealth that came with expectations and connections. Her father owned a commercial real estate empire, her mother chaired charity boards, and Brenda herself seemed to collect prestigious volunteer positions like other women collected shoes. Junior League, hospital auxiliary, museum docent. She was always impeccably dressed, never a hair out of place, never without the perfect accessory. I'd tried my best to bond with her over the years, suggesting lunch dates and shopping trips, but there was always a subtle distance between us. She was polite, even warm at times, but I never quite felt like I measured up to her standards. Still, she made Mitchell happy. Or so I thought. And that was what mattered. 2 years ago, Mitchell bought the country house, a charming stone cottage 3 hours north of Philadelphia, nestled in the Pennsylvania countryside near the Poconos. Head said it was their weekend retreat, a place to escape the pressure of city life. It only visited twice, both times with plenty of advance notice, both times with Mitchell and Brenda playing the role of gracious hosts. The house was beautiful, decorated with Brenda's impeccable taste, all neutral colors and carefully curated rustic charm. Everything felt staged, perfect, like a home and garden magazine spread. Over the past few months, though, I'd noticed changes. Mitchell seemed stressed during our weekly phone calls, his voice tight with tension he blamed on a difficult deal at work. He mentioned frequent business trips, sometimes gone for a week at a time. Brenda had become oddly distant too. Shed canceled our planned shopping day last month, claiming a migraine. When I'd call, Shed keep conversations brief, always with some excuse about a meeting or an appointment. I'd told myself it was nothing, that they were just busy with their important lives, that my loneliness after Roger's death was making me read too much into normal behavior. 2 weeks ago, Mitchell had asked me to keep a spare key to the country house. He and Brenda were planning a trip to Boston for work, Head said, and he needed someone to water the plants and check on things. I'd felt honored that he trusted me, that I could still be useful to my successful son. Yesterday, after calling Mitchell 4 times with no answer, after getting Brenda's voicemail for the 3rd day straight, something in my gut started screaming that something was wrong. That maternal instinct that never quite goes away, even when your child is a 32-year-old investment banker, told me I needed to check on him. This morning, I'd driven 3 hours north, telling myself I was just being a responsible keyholder, just checking on the house like Mitchell had asked. When I pulled up the long gravel driveway and saw Mitchell's silver BMW parked out front, confusion hit first. He was supposed to be in Boston. Brenda's white Lexus was nowhere in sight. Maybe he'd come home early, I reasoned. Maybe he was working from the country house, taking advantage of the quiet to focus on a project. I decided to use the back door, let myself in quietly so I wouldn't disturb him if he was in the middle of an important call or video conference. That decision, that choice, to slip in through the back rather than knock on the front door like a normal visitor, changed everything. The back door opened silently on well-oiled hinges, and I stepped into the mudroom, my heart already racing from the 3-hour drive and the morning coffee had gulped down on the highway. The house smelled different than I remembered. Instead of Brenda's signature lavender reed diffusers, there was the rich, savory aroma of pot roast, slow-cooked with carrots and onions, exactly the way I used to make it for Mitchell when he was growing up. The scent was so achingly familiar it almost made me cry, reminding me of Sunday dinners when Roger was alive, when our family was whole and uncomplicated. From somewhere deeper in the house, I heard laughter. A woman's voice, light and musical, definitely not Brenda's carefully modulated tone. The voice was singing softly, something contemporary I didn't recognize, and there was a joy in it that made my confusion deepen. I crept forward through the mudroom into the hallway, moving as quietly as my practical flats would allow. Through the doorway into the kitchen, I could see her. She was younger than Brenda, maybe late 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore a casual maternity dress in soft blue cotton, nothing like Brenda's designer wardrobe, and over it, impossibly, she wore Brenda's apron, the one with little yellow chickens that Brenda's mother had given her as a housewarming gift. The woman's pregnancy was impossible to miss. Her belly round and full, probably 7 months along if I had to guess. She moved around the kitchen with easy familiarity, checking the pot roast in the oven, humming that tune, completely at home in a space that belonged to my son's wife. The kitchen itself looked different. The curtains had been changed from Brenda's expensive linen panels to cheerful gingham checks. Different dishes sat in the drying rack, colorful pottery instead of Brenda's wedding china. On the refrigerator, held by magnets, were photographs. My breath caught as I focused on them. Mitchell and this woman, smiling at the camera. Mitchell with his hand on her pregnant belly. Mitchell kissing her cheek at what looked like a restaurant. Not a single photo of Brenda anywhere. I must have made some sound, some involuntary gasp of shock, because Mitchell chose that moment to walk into the kitchen. He moved to the woman from behind, wrapped his arms around her, careful of her belly, and kissed her neck in a gesture so tender and intimate that it screamed of deep familiarity. His hand rested on her stomach, and he whispered something I couldn't hear that made her laugh and lean back into him. This wasn't an affair. Affairs were furtive, hidden, shame-faced. This was a life. This was a home. This was my son living with a pregnant woman who was not his wife. My purse slipped from my numb fingers and hit the floor with a thud that echoed through the house like a gunshot. Mitchell spun around, and the color drained from his face so fast I thought he might faint. His eyes went wide, his mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, and for a long moment, we just stared at each other across the kitchen that used to belong to his wife. "Mom," his voice came out strangled, barely above a whisper. "What are you doing here?" I couldn't find words. My brain was trying to process what my eyes were seeing, trying to make it make sense, trying to find some explanation that wasn't the obvious, horrible truth. The pregnant woman turned fully toward me, one hand protectively on her belly, and that's when I really looked at her face. Recognition slammed into me with physical force. "Simone," I breathed. She'd been Mitchell's girlfriend in college. The sweet education major had dated for 2 years before they'd broken up during his first year of graduate school. I'd liked her. Back then, she'd been warm and genuine, so different from the polished women Mitchell would later date. Roger and I had been disappointed when they'd split, though Mitchell had said it was mutual, that they wanted different things. I hadn't seen or heard about her in a decade, and now here she was, pregnant and living in my son's house, while his wife was somewhere else entirely. Completely unaware. Mrs. Hartwell. Simone said softly, and there were tears already forming in her eyes. She looked terrified, caught, guilty. At least she had the decency to look guilty. Someone needs to explain what the hell is going on, I said, and I didn't recognize my own voice. It was cold, hard, the voice of a woman whose entire understanding of her family had just shattered. Right now. Mitchell moved toward me, hands out like he was approaching a spooked animal. Mom, let's go into the living room. We can talk. Just calm down. Don't you dare tell me to calm down. My voice rose despite my best efforts to control it. Your wife is where? Exactly, Mitchell? And who is this pregnant woman in her kitchen, wearing her apron, living in her house? It's not what it looks like. Mitchell started, but I cut him off with a bitter laugh. It's not what it looks like? Your college ex-girlfriend is 7 months pregnant, cooking your favorite meal in what's supposed to be your weekend house with your wife, and you're kissing her neck like she's the love of your life. What exactly am I misunderstanding here? Simone let out a sob, and Mitchell's face crumbled. He ran his hands through his hair. The same gesture Head made as a little boy when Head been caught doing something wrong. And suddenly, I was looking at both the man and the child Head been, and I didn't know either of them at all. The baby is mine, Mitchell said finally, the words dropping into the kitchen like stones into still water. We reconnected 18 months ago. It just happened, Mom. I never stopped loving her. The world tilted. I reached out to steady myself against the doorframe, my accountant's brain automatically doing the math. 18 months. That was a year and a half of lies. Of him going to family dinners with Brenda and me, playing the devoted husband, while maintaining this entire separate life 3 hours away. I thought about Brenda at Thanksgiving, trying so hard to make the perfect turkey, asking Mitchell repeatedly if it was good enough, if his mother approved, while Head smiled and reassured her, and probably been thinking about Simone the whole time. What about Brenda? I whispered. Mitchell wouldn't meet my eyes. That's complicated. I forced Mitchell to sit down at the kitchen table, the same table where Brenda had served me tea and homemade scones on my last visit, back when I thought I knew what my son's life looked like. Simone retreated to the living room, giving us space, but I could hear her crying softly through the doorway. Part of me wanted to comfort her, the maternal instinct that ran too deep to control, but a larger part was too furious and too shattered to care about anyone's tears right now. Tell me everything, I said, my voice flat. And don't you dare lie to me, Mitchell Robert Hartwell. I've had enough lies. He took a shaky breath and began. The story that emerged was worse than I'd imagined. He and Simone had never completely severed their emotional connection after college. They'd stayed in touch sporadically through social media, the occasional text message on birthdays, that kind of thing. When Mitchell had gotten engaged to Brenda, Simone had sent a polite congratulations message, and Head thanked her. On the surface, it all seemed normal, healthy even, the kind of mature friendship between exes that showed emotional growth. But underneath, Mitchell admitted, Head never stopped thinking about her, never stopped wondering what if. 18 months ago, Mitchell ran into Simone at a finance conference in Chicago. She'd been there with her school's administration team, working on their endowment investments. They'd had coffee, then dinner, then drinks, and according to Mitchell, all the old feelings came rushing back. He described it like some kind of romantic destiny. His eyes actually getting misty as he talked about how right it felt to be with her again. How Head realized Head made a terrible mistake marrying Brenda. So you cheated on your wife, I said coldly. Let's call it what it is. Mitchell flinched but nodded. It started as an affair, yes. But Mom, you have to understand, my marriage to Brenda was never real. Not really. That made me sit up straighter. What are you talking about? You chose her. You proposed. You stood in front of 300 people and promised to love her forever. I married her because it was the smart career move, Mitchell said, and the casual cruelty of those words made me physically recoil. Brenda's father is one of the biggest clients at my firm. Her family connections opened doors I could never have opened myself. When I got engaged to her, I got promoted to senior associate. When we got married, I made Junior partner. That's how the world works, Mom. You don't know what it's like. The pressure to succeed, to make partner before 35. I stared at my son like he was a stranger. You married a woman for her business connections? You stood in a church and lied to her face about loving her, just so you could climb the corporate ladder faster. I did care about her, Mitchell protested, but it sounded weak even to him. I do care about her. But it's not love, Mom. It never was. It's a business arrangement that became a prison. Does Brenda know she's in a business arrangement? I asked acidly. Mitchell looked away, shame finally coloring his features. 6 months ago, Simone had told him she was pregnant. Had been shocked at first, he claimed, but then thrilled. This was his chance at real happiness, at building a life with the woman he actually loved. Had started making plans to divorce Brenda, but the timing had to be perfect. He was up for full partner at his firm, a promotion that would secure his financial future and give him the resources to support both his divorce and his new family. He couldn't risk Brenda's father pulling his accounts before the partnership vote, which was supposed to happen next month. So you decided to hide your pregnant girlfriend for months while you played house with your wife. I couldn't keep the disgust out of my voice. What was your plan, Mitchell? When exactly were you going to tell Brenda that you've been living a double life? 3 months ago, Mitchell had moved Simone into the country house full-time. She'd quit her teaching job, given up her apartment in Chicago, and relocated her entire life to Pennsylvania to be with him. Had told her that he was in the process of divorcing Brenda, that it was just a matter of paperwork and timing, that she needed to be patient while he finalized his partnership. Simone had believed him, trusted him, and now she was 7 months pregnant and completely dependent on him, living in a house that legally belonged to him and his wife. Meanwhile, Mitchell had been maintaining his life in Philadelphia with Brenda. Had told her that work required frequent travel and long hours on a major deal. Shed believed him because she always believed him, because Brenda was one of those women who never questioned her husband, who trusted that the man Shed married was exactly who he appeared to be. Mitchell would spend weekdays with Simone at the country house, then return to Philadelphia for weekends with Brenda, playing the role of exhausted but devoted husband. How could you lie to Brenda's face day after day? How could you make Simone give up her entire life based on promises you might not even keep? What kind of man have you become? I'm a man trying to have the life I deserve, Mitchell shouted, his veneer of calm finally cracking. Do you know what kind of pressure I'm under? Do you have any idea what it takes to succeed at my level? I work 80-hour weeks. I manage portfolios worth hundreds of millions. I've earned the right to be happy. Not like this, I said, my voice breaking. Not by destroying 2 women's lives. Not by lying to everyone who loves you. Simone appeared in the doorway, her face blotchy from crying. I didn't know, she said quietly. When we reconnected, he told me he was divorced. I swear, Mrs. Hartwell, I would never have gotten involved if I'd known he was still married. I looked at this young woman, pregnant and alone, and felt my anger shift. She was a victim in this too, manipulated by the same man who'd manipulated his wife, who'd apparently inherited none of his father's integrity and all of his ambition with none of the moral framework to contain it. When did you find out he was lying? I asked her. 3 months into the pregnancy. Simone admitted. I saw a text from Brenda on his phone that made it clear they were still together. When I confronted him, he broke down and told me everything. He swore he was going to divorce her, that he just needed a few more months to make partner. He said if I left him, he'd be raising the baby alone with no support, that he'd fight me on everything. I didn't have anywhere else to go. My family is in Oregon, and I'd already quit my job. I had no choice but to stay. There's always a choice, I said, but even as I said it, I knew how hollow it sounded. This poor girl had been trapped by circumstance and by my son's calculated manipulation. Had isolated her deliberately, made her dependent, ensured she couldn't leave. I turned back to Mitchell. Brenda doesn't know any of this. He shook his head. I'll tell her after the partnership is finalized. I've already drafted a generous settlement offer. Her lawyers will be happy with what I'm proposing. The cold calculation in his voice made me sick. You're going to blindside her. You're going to let her think everything is fine right up until the moment you destroy her life. It's better this way, Mitchell insisted. A clean break. Once I've secured the partnership. If I tell her now, her father will pull his accounts, I'll lose my chance at partner, and I won't have the financial resources to support Simone and the baby properly. This way, everyone wins eventually. Everyone wins, I repeated incredulously. Mitchell, your wife is going to be devastated. You're talking about her like she's a business deal you need to close, not a person whose heart you're about to break into a million pieces. You don't understand the real world, Mom, Mitchell said with that same condescending tone that made me want to slap him. You and Dad had your little accountant practice, and your row house, and your simple life. I'm playing at a different level. Sacrifices have to be made. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. Don't you dare bring your father into this. Roger would be ashamed of you. He would be heartbroken to see what you've become. He raised you to be honest, to have integrity, to treat people with respect, and you've thrown away every value we tried to teach you. Dad was a nobody, Mitchell shot back, and that was the moment I realized I'd truly lost my son. He died with nothing. He worked his whole life and died with a mortgage he hadn't paid off and a retirement account that barely covered his funeral. I'm not going to end up like that. I'm going to have the life I want, the success I've earned, and yes, the woman I actually love. I grabbed my purse from the floor where I'd dropped it. I'm going home. I need to think about what to do with this information. Mitchell's eyes went cold. You're not going to tell Brenda. It's not your decision what I do or don't tell anyone. Mom, if you tell her now, you'll destroy everything I've worked for. You'll ruin my career, my future, your grandchild's future. Is that what you want? I looked at Simone, standing in the doorway with her hand on her pregnant belly, then at my son, the stranger wearing my child's face. But I'm starting to realize you don't even know what that is anymore. I walked out the back door and didn't look back, even when Mitchell called after me. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before I was calm enough to drive, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, my mind racing through the implications of what I'd just learned. My son was living a double life. My daughter-in-law had no idea her marriage was a sham. A young woman was pregnant and trapped in my son's web of lies, and I had no idea what to do about any of it. The 3-hour drive back to Philadelphia was the longest of my life. Every mile, I replayed the scene in my head, looking for the moment where my son had become someone I didn't recognize. Had it been gradual? Had there been signs I'd missed? Or had Mitchell always had this capacity for cold manipulation, and I'd simply refused to see it because he was my child, my golden boy, the one thing I'd done right in my life? By the time I pulled into my driveway, I still had no answers, just a phone that was buzzing with ignored calls from Mitchell and a secret that was burning a hole in my conscience. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at my ceiling, watching the shadows from the streetlight dance across the plaster, my mind spinning through scenarios like a computer running endless calculations. Tell Brenda, and I'd destroy her world but give her the truth she deserved. Stay silent, and I'd be complicit in my son's betrayal, letting an innocent woman continue living a lie. Call Mitchell and threaten him into confessing, and he might simply cut me out of his life entirely, leaving me with no grandchildren, no son, nothing but the memory of the family I used to have. Around 3 a.m, I gave up on sleep and called my sister Denise. She lived in Pittsburgh with her husband Carl, and we'd always been close, especially after Roger died. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice thick with sleep. Lorraine? It's 3 a.m. What's wrong? I told her everything. The words poured out in a frantic stream, and when I finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Holy hell, Denise finally said. Mitchell? You're Mitchell? The kid who cried when he accidentally stepped on a caterpillar in 4th grade. I don't think that Mitchell exists anymore, I said, and saying it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Honestly, I think you stay out of it. This is Mitchell's mess. Let him clean it up, but Brenda doesn't deserve this. She doesn't deserve to be lied to while he finalizes his partnership and plans his exit strategy like she's some kind of business transaction. No, she doesn't, Denise agreed. But she's also not your responsibility, Lorraine. Mitchell is a grown man. If you insert yourself into this, you're going to become the bad guy in everyone's story. Brenda will shoot the messenger, Mitchell will cut you off. That pregnant girl will blame you if everything falls apart. There's no version of this where you come out looking good. I don't care about looking good, I protested. I care about doing what's right. And what is right? Denise challenged. Tell me, because I genuinely don't know. Is it right to blow up that girl's life when she's 7 months pregnant? Is it right to potentially derail Mitchell's career and leave him unable to support his child? Is it right to devastate Brenda with information she can't unknow? Sometimes there are no good choices, Lore. Sometimes every option is terrible. And all you can do is try to minimize the damage. I knew she was right, at least partly, but it didn't make the weight on my chest any lighter. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee I didn't drink and watched the sunrise through my window. Roger's chair sat empty across from me, and I found myself talking to him like I had so many times since his death. What would you do? I asked the empty chair. You always knew the right thing to do. You never wavered, never compromised your principles. Our son has none of your integrity, and I don't know how that happened. Did we fail him somehow? Did I spoil him after you died? How did he become someone who uses people like chess pieces? The chair, predictably, offered no answers. But I knew what Roger would have said. He'd have said that secrets are poison, that lies compound and grow until they consume everything, that the only way through difficulty is through honesty. Roger had been almost annoyingly principled, the kind of man who'd return to a store if the cashier gave him too much change. Who'd never cheated on his taxes even when everyone else did. Who'd taught Mitchell that character was what you did when nobody was watching. Clearly those lessons hadn't stuck. 3 days crawled by while I wrestled with my conscience. I ignored Mitchell's calls and texts, each one more desperate than the last, begging me not to do anything rash, to give him time to handle things his way. I drafted and deleted a dozen emails to Brenda. I even looked up Simona's information online, thinking maybe I should talk to her separately, woman to woman, and convince her to leave before she got in any deeper. But every time I reached for the phone or started to type, Denise's words echoed in my head. There's no version of this where you come out looking good. On the 4th day, Brenda showed up at my door unannounced. She stood on my porch holding an expensive bottle of wine and wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, and my heart dropped into my stomach because surely she knew, surely Mitchell had confessed, surely this was the confrontation I'd been dreading. Lorraine. She kissed my cheek, breezing past me into my living room like she'd been there 100 times, instead of maybe twice in 5 years. I'm so glad you're home. I tried calling, but I think something's wrong with my phone. Anyway, I have the most wonderful news, and I simply couldn't wait to share it. She settled onto my couch, practically glowing with excitement, and I felt dread crawl up my spine like an insect with too many legs. What news? I managed to ask. Brenda's eyes filled with tears, the happy kind, and she reached for my hands. Impregnant. The room tilted. I heard the words. Understood them, but they couldn't be real, because the universe couldn't be that cruel. You're what? Pregnant. She laughed, wiping at her eyes. I know. I can barely believe it myself. I've been undergoing fertility treatments for the past 6 months. Mitchell doesn't even know because I wanted to surprise him. I've had 3 failed cycles, and I was starting to lose hope, but then last week, I took the test and it was positive, and the doctor confirmed it yesterday. I'm 8 weeks along, Lorraine. You're going to be a grandmother. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Mitchell had 2 pregnant women, 2 babies on the way. Simone was due in 2 months. Brenda had just started her first trimester. He was about to be a father twice over, and one of these women had absolutely no idea the other existed. That's wonderful, I heard myself say, the words coming from somewhere outside my body because it apparently left it and was now floating somewhere near my ceiling, looking down at this catastrophe unfold. That's just wonderful, Brenda. I thought maybe we could start planning the nursery together. Brenda continued, oblivious to my dissociation. And of course we'll need a baby shower, though not too early. I don't want to jinx anything. But maybe in the second trimester? I was thinking we could do a beautiful garden party theme. Very elegant, nothing too cutesy. And you'll help me, won't you? I know my mother will have opinions, but I want your input too. You're going to be this baby's grandmother. She kept talking, her words washing over me in a wave of horrible irony. She talked about strollers and nursery colors and whether they should find out the gender or be surprised. She talked about how Mitchell had been working so hard lately, how she'd barely seen him, how this baby would bring them closer together. She talked and talked while I sat frozen, watching her build castles in the air that my son was planning to demolish the moment his partnership came through. Finally, mercifully, she stopped talking long enough to notice my silence. Lorraine? Are you all right? You look pale. I'm fine. I lied, which was becoming my default state. Just a bit shocked. This is such big news. I know. She hugged me, and I could feel her happiness radiating through the embrace. Completely genuine and completely doomed. I haven't told anyone else yet, except you. I wanted you to be the first to know. After Mitchell, of course. I'm going to surprise him tonight with a special dinner and the ultrasound photo. Do you think he'll be excited? I thought about Mitchell at the country house, his hand on Simone's pregnant belly, the tender way head kissed her neck, the photos on the refrigerator of the life he was building with someone else. I'm sure he'll be surprised, I said carefully. After Brenda left, spinning dreams about the future that would never happen, I barely made it to the bathroom before I threw up. I knelt on my bathroom floor, forehead pressed against the cool tile, and felt the full weight of what I knew crushing down on me. This wasn't just about an affair anymore. This wasn't just about my son's betrayal of his marriage vows. This was about two babies, two women who thought they were building lives with Mitchell, two families that were about to collide in the most destructive way possible. I called Mitchell the moment I could stand up. He answered on the first ring. Mom. Thank God. Look, I know you're upset, but if you'll just give me time to handle this my way, Brenda is pregnant. Silence. Dead. Absolute silence on the other end of the line. Mitchell? Did you hear me? Brenda is pregnant. 8 weeks. She's been doing fertility treatments you apparently knew nothing about. She came to my house today to tell me. She wants to plan the nursery together. She's going to surprise you tonight with the news. More silence, then a string of profanity I'd never heard my son use before. This can't be happening, he said, his voice hollow. This can't be real. She told me she didn't want kids yet. She said we should wait until I made full partner. Well, apparently she changed her mind. Or lied. I guess dishonesty runs in your marriage. The bitterness in my voice was sharp enough to cut. What are you going to do now, Mitchell? You have 2 pregnant women. 2 babies due within weeks of each other. How exactly do you plan to handle this? I don't know, he admitted. And for the first time since this nightmare started, he sounded genuinely afraid. I need time to think. I need to figure this out. While you're figuring it out, your wife is planning a baby shower. Your girlfriend is 7 months pregnant with no idea your wife just conceived. And I'm sitting here knowing all of this, complicit in your lies because I don't know what else to do. Mom, please, Mitchell said, and he sounded like a little boy again, scared and overwhelmed. Please don't tell Brenda yet. It'll destroy her, and the stress could hurt the baby. Your concern for Brenda's well-being is touching, given that you're actively planning to divorce her and shatter her entire world. That was before, Mitchell said quickly. Things are different now. I need to rethink everything. Just give me a few days. I hung up without answering. I had no more words, no more energy, no more ability to process the catastrophe my family had become. I sat in my empty house and thought about Roger, about the simple, honest life we'd built together, about the son we'd raised who we thought we knew, and I wondered, not for the first time, What I'd done to deserve having my world turned upside down again, just when I thought I'd finally found my footing after losing my husband. My phone buzzed with a text from Mitchell. "I'm coming over tomorrow. We need to talk. Please don't do anything until then." I didn't respond. I turned off my phone, unplugged my landline, and sat in the dark living room where Roger and I had spent 30 years of evenings, where Wed raised Mitchell, where Wed believed we were building something good and lasting. That night, I finally understood what it meant to grieve someone who was still alive. My son, the man I thought I knew, was gone, and the stranger wearing his face was someone I didn't know how to love anymore. Mitchell arrived at my house at 9 the following morning, looking like he hadn't slept. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his tie was crooked, and there were shadows under his eyes that made him look older than his 32 years. He carried a folder under his arm and had that desperate energy of a cornered animal. I let him in without a word and pointed to the kitchen table, the same place where Roger and I had solved all our family problems over the years. Somehow I doubted this one would be as simple as deciding on Mitchell's curfew or which college to attend. He sat down heavily and pulled out the folder, spreading photos across my table. Ultrasound images of Simone's baby, clear and detailed, showing tiny fingers and toes, a perfect little profile. "This is your grandchild, Mom. Your first grandchild. Due in 7 weeks. A girl. We're naming her Autumn." My throat tightened despite my anger. The baby was beautiful in that otherworldly way ultrasounds captured, all potential and promise. "Don't manipulate me with baby pictures, Mitchell. I'm not manipulating you. I'm showing you what's at stake. This baby deserves to know her grandmother. Simone wants you to be part of Autumn's life. If you blow this up now, if you tell Brenda everything, the fallout will be nuclear. Brenda's family lawyers will destroy me. They'll make sure I lose everything, including any chance at being a real father to Autumn. You should have thought about that before you got your girlfriend pregnant while married to someone else," I said coldly. Mitchell's expression hardened. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Do you have any idea what it's like to be trapped in a marriage that was never real? To wake up every day next to someone you don't love? To pretend for years that everything is fine while you're dying inside? Plenty of people are in difficult marriages. They don't all create secret families on the side. I found real love, Mom." Mitchell leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Simone is the person I should have been with all along. When I'm with her, I'm the person I was supposed to be. The person Dad would have wanted me to be. Don't you dare invoke your father to justify this mess," I snapped. "Roger would be disgusted by what you've done." Mitchell flinched but pressed on. "Here's what I'm proposing. Give me 3 months. Just 3 months. Brenda's pregnancy is high risk," she told me last night. "Her blood pressure is elevated. The doctor wants her on modified bed rest. If I tell her about Simone now, the stress could cause a miscarriage. Do you want that on your conscience?" I hated that his words found purchase in my heart. I didn't want Brenda to lose her baby. I didn't want to be responsible for that kind of pain. "So what's your plan? Keep lying to her for 3 more months while Simone has your baby, and Brenda gets more attached to a marriage that doesn't exist. My plan is to wait until both babies are safely born. Then I'll tell Brenda everything. I'll offer her a generous settlement, more than generous. Her lawyers will be happy. She'll have financial security and a baby to focus on, and the divorce will be clean and quick. Simone will have Autumn. Everyone gets what they need. Accept the truth. Accept honesty. Accept basic human decency." Mitchell's expression shifted, the desperation giving way to something colder, more calculated. "If you tell Brenda now, I'll deny everything." I stared at him. "What? I'll say you're having a breakdown. That you've been acting erratically since Dad died. That you're making up stories because you're jealous of my marriage and success. Brenda will believe me, Mom. Her family will believe me. I'm a partner at a prestigious firm. You're a widowed accountant who lives alone and hasn't been the same since her husband died. Who do you think they'll believe?" The cruelty of it took my breath away. "You'd destroy my reputation? You'd make me look insane. If you force my hand." "Yes." Mitchell's voice was flat. Matter of fact, I've worked too hard to build my life to let it fall apart now. I'll do whatever I have to do to protect my career and my future with Simone. If that means sacrificing my relationship with you, so be it. Who are you? I whispered. What happened to my son? Your son grew up, Mitchell said, and he stood to leave. He learned that nice guys finish last, that success requires sacrifice, that sometimes you have to make hard choices. I'm giving you the same choice, Mom. Stay quiet for 3 months, and you get to be part of your grandchildren's lives. Tell Brenda now, and you lose everything. Your reputation, your son, your grandchildren, all of it. Your choice. He left me sitting at the kitchen table with the ultrasound pictures scattered in front of me. Perfect little Autumn frozen in black and white, a baby who didn't ask to be born into this disaster. I looked at Roger's empty chair and felt more alone than I had since the day he died. My son had just threatened me, had just revealed himself to be capable of destroying his own mother to protect his lies, and the worst part was, I believed him. Mitchell would absolutely ruin my reputation if I threatened his carefully constructed double life. He had the resources, the connections, the ruthlessness to do it. I gathered up the ultrasound photos with shaking hands, hating myself for the tenderness I felt looking at that little face. Mitchell was right about one thing. This baby was innocent. Autumn didn't deserve to be born into a war between her father and grandmother, but neither did Brenda's baby. Neither did Simone. Neither did Brenda herself, who was probably at home right now, happily planning a nursery for a baby she thought would grow up in an intact family. That night, I sat in my living room with a glass of wine I didn't drink and faced the truth. I was trapped. Mitchell had outmaneuvered me, had found my weakness, and exploited it. My maternal instinct, my desire to know my grandchildren, my fear of losing what little family I had left after Roger's death, had weaponized all of it against me, and the sickest part was that it was working. I couldn't bring myself to pick up the phone and call Brenda. Not yet, not while I could hear Mitchell's threat echoing in my ears, not while I could see baby Autumn's perfect little face in those ultrasound pictures. I'd become exactly what I'd feared most. Complicit, an enabler of my son's betrayal. A woman who chose her own comfort and connection over doing what was right. Roger's voice seemed to whisper from his empty chair, disappointment in every syllable. But when I looked over, there was nothing there but shadows and the ghost of the man I'd spent 30 years loving. I'd thought losing him was the hardest thing I'd ever face. I was wrong. Watching my son become someone I couldn't respect, someone I wasn't sure I even liked, was so much worse. Because grief eventually heals, time eventually softens the edges of loss. But this betrayal of values, this murder of the person I thought my son was, there was no recovering from this. Whatever happened next, whether I stayed silent or spoke up, I'd already lost something irreplaceable. The illusion that I'd raised a good man. A week passed in a fog of indecision and self-loathing. I avoided Brenda's calls about nursery colors and baby shower themes, making excuses about work being busy, about not feeling well, anything to avoid having to look her in the eye while carrying the weight of what I knew. Mitchell texted me daily, cheerful updates about Simone's pregnancy, photos of the nursery he was building at the country house, all designed to normalize the situation and draw me into his web of deception. I responded with brief acknowledgments, neither endorsing nor condemning, trapped in a paralysis I despised. Then, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up on the fourth ring. Mrs. Hartwell. The voice was female, young, nervous. You don't know me, but we need to talk about Mitchell. My heart rate spiked. Who is this? My name is Geneva. I'm Brenda's younger sister. I sank into the nearest chair. Of all the people I'd expected to hear from, Brenda's sister wasn't on the list. Geneva was 39. A lawyer in New York. Someone I'd met at the wedding and maybe twice since. Sharp. Observant. The kind of woman who didn't miss much. I've been suspicious of Mitchell for months, Geneva continued when I didn't respond. The late nights, the mysterious trips, the way he'd check his phone constantly when he was with Brenda. So, 6 weeks ago, I hired a private investigator. Oh God, I breathed. I know about Simone. I know about the country house. I have photos, bank statements, everything. I was planning to tell Brenda last week, but then she called me about her pregnancy. Geneva's voice cracked slightly. Mrs. Hartwell, I don't know what to do. I can't tell her now. The doctor said her blood pressure is already too high. The stress could cause her to miscarry. But I also can't watch her build dreams on lies. Relief and dread warred in my chest. I wasn't alone in knowing. Someone else carried this burden. When did you find out I knew? I asked. The investigator photographed you at the country house the day you discovered them. He didn't know who you were at first, but I recognized you from family photos. I figured if you were there, you knew the truth. I've been trying to decide whether to call you, and finally I just couldn't take the isolation anymore. I feel the same way, I admitted. We arranged to meet the following day at a cafe halfway between Philadelphia and New York, neutral territory for a conversation that felt like planning a war strategy. Geneva arrived carrying a thick folder that she slid across the table to me with the efficiency of someone used to dealing in evidence. She was dressed in a sleek business suit, her dark hair pulled back severely, her expression grim. We looked at each other across the cafe table. Two women who'd been thrown together by my son's betrayal, and I saw my own exhaustion and moral conflict reflected in her eyes. Before we go through this, I need to know, Geneva said quietly. Are you going to protect Mitchell? Because if you are, I need to know now. I don't know what I'm going to do, I answered honestly. Hez my son, but he's also become someone I don't recognize, someone who threatens his own mother and uses pregnant women as pawns. So no, I'm not sure I'm protecting him anymore. I think I'm just trying to figure out how to minimize the damage. Geneva nodded slowly and opened the folder. What she showed me made my stomach turn. The investigator had been thorough. There were photos of Mitchell and Simone together spanning back 15 months, long before Head claimed they'd reconnected. Receipts from romantic dinners, hotel stays, expensive gifts, bank statements showing Mitchell had been systematically draining Brenda's family trust fund, the one her grandfather had established for her, the one Mitchell controlled as her husband. Over $250,000 had been spent supporting his double life. Nursery furniture for Simone, maternity clothes, medical bills, a new car, all paid for with Brenda's money while Brenda herself had been using her personal savings to pay for her fertility treatments because Mitchell had claimed his bonuses were tied up in investments, has been stealing from her, Geneva said flatly, has been funding his girlfriend and illegitimate child with his wife's inheritance. That's not just betrayal. That's financial abuse. That's a crime. I felt sick looking at the numbers, at the cold calculation behind every transaction. This wasn't a man who'd made a mistake in the heat of passion. This was systematic, deliberate exploitation of the woman who trusted him most. There's more, Geneva said quietly, and pulled out another set of photos. Different woman, younger. The investigator noticed charges at hotels on dates that didn't match either Simone's location or Brenda's. So he dug deeper. The woman in the photos was maybe 27, professional-looking, with auburn hair and an eager smile. She was photographed with Mitchell at what looked like a business conference, their body language unmistakably intimate. Dinner, drinks, entering a hotel room together. Her name is Meredith Quinn. She's a junior associate at Mitchell's firm. These photos are from 6 months ago, when Simone was 5 months pregnant. Geneva's voice was hard. Your son isn't just living a double life. He's living a triple life. While his pregnant girlfriend was at home and his wife was undergoing fertility treatments, he was having an affair with a colleague. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table, trying to process this new layer of betrayal. Does Simone know? I doubt it. Does that change anything for you? Knowing he's been lying to everyone, including the woman he claims is his true love, it did change things. Or maybe it just clarified them. Mitchell wasn't a man torn between two loves, making difficult choices in impossible circumstances. He was a narcissist, a user, someone who saw other people as resources to be exploited for his comfort and advancement. The son Id raised was truly gone, if Head ever existed at all. We have to tell them, I said. All of them. Brenda, Simone, this Meredith woman, they all deserve to know the truth. Agreed, Geneva said. But we need a strategy. Brenda's pregnancy is high risk. The shock could literally kill her or the baby. We need to time this carefully. Gather all the evidence, and make sure Mitchell can't wiggle out of it or spin the narrative his way. We spent 3 hours in that cafe, planning like generals before a battle. Geneva would use her legal contacts to freeze Brenda's trust fund accounts so Mitchell couldn't drain them further. I would approach Simone at the country house when Mitchell was at work, show her the evidence of Meredith, plant the seeds of doubt. Geneva's investigator would track down Meredith and determine her current involvement with Mitchell. Then, once we had all 3 women informed and on the same page, we'd confront Mitchell together. Give him one chance to come clean to everyone himself, or we'd do it for him. He threatened me, I admitted as we prepared to leave. He said if I told Brenda, He'd claim I was having a breakdown, that I was mentally unstable from grief. He said He'd destroy my reputation and make sure I never saw my grandchildren. Geneva's expression hardened. He pulled the same intimidation with Brenda's family, told her parents I was jealous of their marriage, that I was trying to sabotage Mitchell's career because I'm unmarried and bitter. My own parents stopped taking my calls for 2 weeks. Your son is very good at playing victim and turning people against anyone who threatens his comfortable lies. Then we need to make sure the evidence is so overwhelming he can't lie his way out of it, I said. We shook hands in the parking lot, an alliance formed between 2 women who barely knew each other but who were united by a common purpose. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not quite hope, but something close to it. Determination, agency, the sense that I was finally doing something instead of just drowning in impossible choices. Mitchell had made a critical error in his manipulations. Had assumed I'd stay isolated, too afraid of losing him to act. He hadn't counted on the fact that there were other people who knew, other people who were just as trapped and desperate for a way out. And he definitely hadn't counted on his mother-in-law's sister being a lawyer with access to investigators and resources. That night, I looked at Roger's photo on my nightstand and felt like I could finally meet his eyes again. I'm going to fix this. Or at least I'm going to try. Our son is beyond saving, but maybe I can save the people he's hurting. Maybe that's enough. 2 days later, I drove back to the country house. Geneva's investigator had confirmed Mitchell's schedule. He'd be at the office until 7, giving me hours to talk to Simone without interference. My hands shook on the steering wheel the entire drive, rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd break the news that the man she'd upended her life for had been cheating on her while she carried his child. Simone answered the door with Autumn clearly visible beneath her maternity dress, now 8 months along and looking ready to pop. Her face lit up when she saw me, then quickly dimmed with worry. Mrs. Hartwell? Is everything okay? Mitchell said you weren't feeling well. Can I come in? We need to talk. I could see the fear cross her face, but she stepped aside and let me enter. The house looked different again. More baby items had appeared, a bouncer in the living room, a stack of tiny clothes on the couch waiting to be washed. Evidence of nesting, of a woman preparing for motherhood, completely unaware of the storm gathering around her. We sat at the kitchen table, the same place I'd confronted Mitchell weeks ago, and I pulled out the folder Geneva had given me. Simone, I need to show you something. And I need you to understand that I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing this because you deserve the truth. I laid out the photos of Mitchell and Meredith, the hotel receipts, the timeline showing he'd been with Meredith in Miami when Simone was 5 months pregnant. Simone's face went pale, then red, then pale again. Her hand went protectively to her belly, and I watched her world shatter in real time. He said those conferences were just for work, she whispered. He said he hated being away from me, that he was counting the days until he could be home. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. Whatever mistakes Simone had made in getting involved with a married man, she didn't deserve this additional betrayal. Is he still seeing her? Simone asked, her voice small. We don't know. Geneva's investigator is trying to find out. Geneva? Brenda's sister. I nodded and explained the alliance, that Brenda's family was suspicious too, that I wasn't alone in knowing about Mitchell's web of lies. Simone listened with growing horror, and I watched the scales fall from her eyes. She'd been in love with an illusion, and reality was so much uglier than she'd imagined. I gave up everything, Simone said, tears streaming down her face. My apartment, my job, my independence. I moved to the middle of nowhere to wait for him to divorce his wife. I'm about to have his baby, and the whole time he was what? Sleeping with some woman from his office? Making me feel crazy for doubting him when my gut told me something was wrong. Has been controlling you, I said gently. Making you financially dependent so you couldn't leave. That's what abusers do. I'm not some stupid victim, Simone shot back, her tears turning to anger. I made choices, bad choices. I knew he was married when I got involved, even if I didn't know the full truth. I told myself it was different. That we were soulmates. That love justified everything. I was so stupid. You're not stupid. You're human. And my son is very good at manipulation. His mother and I couldn't see through him for weeks. Simone stood abruptly and paced the kitchen. What am I supposed to do? I'm 8 months pregnant. I have no job, no savings, no home except this one that belongs to him and his wife. My parents don't even know the full truth. They think I'm with a divorced man, planning to get married. If they find out I'm pregnant by someone who's still married, who's been lying to everyone, they'll be so disappointed. My mom is very religious. She'll never forgive me. Your parents love you, I said. And when they meet their granddaughter, they'll love her too. You need to tell them the truth and let them help you. I'm due in 4 weeks, Simone said, her voice rising with panic. 4 weeks, Mrs. Hartwell. Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? I can't have a baby in a homeless shelter. You're not going to be homeless. I have a guest room. You and Autumn can stay with me as long as you need to while we figure things out. Simone stared at me. Why would you do that? I'm the other woman. I helped destroy your son's marriage. Because you're 8 months pregnant and you need help. Because my grandchild doesn't deserve to suffer for the sins of her parents. Because someone needs to start acting like a decent human being in this disaster, and apparently it's not going to be Mitchell. Simone broke down completely, sobbing so hard I worried she'd hyperventilate. I held her while she cried. This young woman who'd made terrible choices but who didn't deserve to be abandoned and lied to. When the tears finally subsided, she looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. There's something else you should know, she said quietly. Sometimes he doesn't come home when he says he will. Sometimes he says he's working late, but when I call his office, they say he left hours ago. And he's been so distant lately. He doesn't touch me anymore. He barely looks at me. I thought maybe it was because I'm so pregnant that I'm not attractive anymore. But now I wonder if he's with her, with Meredith. The thought made me sick. My son, leaving his 8 months pregnant girlfriend alone while he pursued yet another woman. How had I raised someone capable of this level of cruelty? Geneva called while I was still at the house, her voice tight with urgency. The investigator found Meredith. You need to hear this. She's pregnant too. The world stopped. I actually felt it stop, time freezing while my brain tried to process those words. What? Meredith is pregnant. 6 weeks along. The investigator found a charge on Mitchell's credit card for an OB-GYN visit. 3 women. Lorraine. Your son has 3 pregnant women. I looked at Simone, sitting at the table with her hand on her belly, and felt rage like I'd never experienced. Not just anger, pure, incandescent fury at the man who'd done this, who'd casually destroyed lives while climbing his corporate ladder. We need to talk to her, I said. All of us. Me, you, and Simone. Meredith needs to know the truth before she gets in any deeper. Geneva agreed and said she'd have the investigator arrange a meeting. I stayed with Simone for another hour, helping her understand that none of this was her fault, that Mitchell was the architect of this disaster, that she and Autumn would be okay, When I finally left, I felt simultaneously energized and exhausted. 3 women, 3 babies. One narcissistic man who saw them all as supporting players in the drama of his life. On the drive home, Geneva called again. "Lorraine, there's more." The investigator found evidence of embezzlement. Mitchell has been taking small amounts from client accounts, carefully hidden, to fund his lifestyle. If this gets out, he's not just losing his partnership, he's going to prison. "Good," I said. And meant it. He deserves to lose everything. He deserves to face consequences for once in his entitled life. Once we have all 3 women on board, we're taking everything to both the firm's ethics committee and the police. Mitchell's going down. The only question is whether he goes down swinging or whether he has enough sense left to do the right thing and confess. That night, I added another item to my mental list of things I never thought I'd do. Conspire to destroy my own son's career and possibly send him to prison. But as I sat in my living room, looking at the photos Geneva had left with me, photos of 3 women whose lives Mitchell had carelessly shattered, I realized I wasn't destroying him. Head destroyed himself. I was just finally letting him face the consequences He'd been dodging his whole privileged life. Roger's voice seemed to whisper approval from his empty chair. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I was honoring his memory instead of betraying it. Geneva's investigator arranged for us to meet Meredith outside Mitchell's office building on a Thursday afternoon. She emerged at 5:30 sharp, professional in a gray suit, her auburn hair shining in the late sun, young and confident, and completely unaware that her world was about to implode. Geneva approached her first, introducing herself as a lawyer who needed to discuss a sensitive matter regarding Mitchell Hartwell. Meredith's confident expression faltered when she saw me step forward. "Who are you?" she asked. Defensive now. "I'm Mitchell's mother," I said. "And this is Geneva, his wife's sister. We need to talk to you about Mitchell. All of it." Meredith's face went white. "His wife? He told me he was divorced. Has very much married," Geneva said coolly. "To my sister, who is currently 3 months pregnant with his child. Now, why don't we go somewhere private and you can tell us about your relationship with my brother-in-law?" We ended up in a hotel lobby bar, the 3 of us sitting in a corner booth while Meredith's carefully constructed world came crashing down. "Shed started at the firm 8 months ago," she told us, and Mitchell had been assigned as her mentor. Had been charming, attentive, encouraging. Had told her he was divorced, that his ex-wife lived in Connecticut and they'd parted amicably. Had pursued her aggressively, expensive dinners and weekend trips, making her feel special and desired. When Shed accidentally gotten pregnant 6 weeks ago, Shed been terrified to tell him, worried it would end their relationship. Instead, Head seemed happy, told her they'd get married after his big promotion came through, that he wanted to be a father, that everything would work out perfectly. He said he loved me, Meredith whispered, staring at the photos Geneva had laid out. Photos of Mitchell with Brenda. Photos of Mitchell with Simone. A timeline that showed He'd been sleeping with all 3 women simultaneously, managing his time like a corporate project, compartmentalizing his lies. "He doesn't love anyone but himself," I said, and watched Meredith process this truth. "I'm his mother, and I barely recognize him anymore. Has a narcissist who uses people. You're 27, early in your career, and he saw someone he could manipulate. It's not your fault." "I slept with a married man," Meredith said, her voice breaking. "I'm pregnant by someone's husband." "Oh God, his wife is pregnant too?" "She's going to think him a homewrecker." "My sister doesn't know yet," Geneva said. "Her pregnancy is high risk. But she's going to find out soon. And when she does, she's going to need to know that you were lied to. That you're a victim in this too. There's someone else you need to meet," I said gently. "I'd brought Simone with me, and Shed been waiting in the car. I texted her, and a minute later she waddled into the bar, 8 months pregnant and furious. When Meredith saw her, she burst into tears. The next hour was brutal. 3 women, all betrayed by the same man, comparing notes and realizing the scope of Mitchell's deception. Simone learned that Mitchell had been with Meredith when he claimed to be at work conferences. Meredith learned she was pregnant by a man who already had 2 other babies on the way. Geneva laid out all the evidence, the bank statements, the hotel receipts, the embezzlement charges her investigator had uncovered. Hez going to prison. Geneva said flatly. The firm's ethics committee is reviewing the embezzlement evidence next week. Criminal charges will follow. Everything he's built is about to come crashing down. Good, Simone said viciously. He deserves to rot. Meredith was quieter, still in shock. I'm going to lose my job. When this comes out, when everyone at the firm knows I was sleeping with a married partner, my career is over. The firm's HR has been informed you were misled about his marital status, Geneva said. They're being cooperative. You'll likely be transferred to a different department, but your job should be safe. Mitchell is the one who violated company policy by pursuing a subordinate. What about Brenda? I asked. When are we telling her? Geneva's expression was grim. Soon. But we need one more piece in place first. We're confronting Mitchell tomorrow. All of us. We're giving him 24 hours to tell Brenda himself, or we do it for him. Either way, the truth comes out. We spent another hour planning our strategy, and an unlikely sisterhood formed. 3 women and a mother-in-law, united by betrayal, determined to take down the man who'd used them all. Meredith decided she would terminate the pregnancy, unable to face raising Mitchell's child alone. Simone was too far along for that option, but she called her parents that night and told them everything. They were on a flight from Oregon the next morning, ready to support their daughter through the aftermath, and I sat in the center of it all, watching my son's empire crumble, feeling grief and satisfaction in equal measure. The next day, we gathered at my house. Geneva, Simone, Meredith, and me. Wed called Mitchell and told him we needed to meet urgently. He arrived at 2 o'clock, cocky and confident, clearly thinking he could talk his way out of whatever Wed discovered. His expression changed when he walked in and saw all 4 of us sitting in my living room, folders of evidence on the coffee table. What is this? He asked, but his voice was uncertain now. This is your reckoning, Geneva said coldly. She stood and began presenting the evidence like she was in a courtroom. Every lie, every betrayal, every dollar stolen. Mitchell tried to interrupt, to deny, to spin. But Geneva was relentless. She played audio recordings from the investigator, showed bank statements, laid out the timeline in excruciating detail. 45 minutes later, Mitchell sat slumped in my armchair, his face ashen, his carefully constructed world demolished. How could you? I asked when Geneva finished. How could you do this to so many people? I deserve to be happy, Mitchell said, but the words sounded hollow even to him. You deserve to be in prison, Simone spat. You lied to me for 18 months. You made me give up everything. You got me pregnant and isolated me so I couldn't leave. And you, Meredith added, her voice shaking but determined. You told me you loved me while you had a pregnant girlfriend at home and a pregnant wife in the city. You're a monster. Mitchell looked at each of us in turn, and I saw the moment he realized he couldn't manipulate his way out. The evidence was too overwhelming, the alliance too strong. What do you want? He asked finally. We want you to tell Brenda, Geneva said. Everything. You have 24 hours. Tomorrow at this time, I'm telling my sister what you've done, showing her all this evidence. You can either face her like a man, or you can let her hear it from me. Your choice. Her pregnancy is high risk, Mitchell protested. The shock could kill her, or the baby. You're asking me to potentially kill my wife and child. You should have thought about that before you created this situation, I said coldly. And don't you dare act like you care about Brenda's health. You've been bleeding her dry and planning to divorce her while she's carrying your baby. There's more, Geneva added. The embezzlement evidence goes to the district attorney on Monday. You're going to be arrested. You're going to lose your license, your partnership, everything. The only question is whether you come clean to everyone first or whether you add being a coward to your list of crimes. Mitchell's face crumpled. I'll lose everything, he whispered. You already have, I said. You lost it. The moment you decided your comfort mattered more than other people's lives. Now the consequences are just catching up to you. Mitchell looked at me with something like desperation in his eyes. Mom, please. Don't let them do this. You're my mother. You're supposed to protect me. I protected you your whole life, I said, my voice breaking despite my anger. I made excuses for you, covered for you, enabled you, and look what it created. A man who thinks he's entitled to lie and cheat and steal without consequences. No more, Mitchell. I'm done protecting you from the results of your own choices. You're on your own now. He stood abruptly, knocking over the chair. You're all going to regret this, he said, his tone turning ugly. I'll make sure of it. I have lawyers. I have connections. I'll destroy every one of you. Try it, Geneva said. I'm a lawyer too, and I have better connections than you. And unlike you, I actually have evidence and truth on my side. Mitchell stormed out, slamming my front door so hard a picture fell off the wall. We sat in silence for a long moment, processing what had just happened. Hez not going to tell her, Meredith said finally. Hez going to run or try to make up more lies. Then we tell her tomorrow, Geneva said. And we bring the police with us in case he tries something desperate. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I kept thinking about Brenda, unsuspecting and happy, planning her baby's nursery, believing in a marriage that had never been real. Tomorrow her world would explode, and there was nothing I could do to soften that blow. Sometimes doing the right thing didn't feel righteous or heroic. Sometimes it just felt like lighting a match and watching everything burn, knowing it had to burn before anything healthy could grow in its place. Roger's photo watched me from the nightstand, and I wondered what Hed'd think of all this. Of his son becoming a criminal. Of his wife conspiring to expose him. Of the family wed built together splintering into pieces so small I didn't know if they could ever be reassembled. I tried. I told the photo. I tried to do it your way, to believe in integrity and truth. But our son didn't listen to anything we taught him. So now he has to learn the hard way that actions have consequences. I just hope Brenda and her baby survive the lesson. The next morning, Geneva called at 6 a.m. It's already happening. Mitchell called Brenda at midnight and told her about Simone. His version, of course, painting himself as the victim of a seductive ex-girlfriend. But at least she knows something. My heart sank. How is she? Not good. She's at the hospital. Her blood pressure spiked dangerously. They're monitoring the baby. My parents are with her. She's asking to see you. I arrived at the hospital within the hour to find Brenda in a private room, hooked up to monitors, her face pale and streaked with tears. Her mother sat on one side, Geneva on the other, and both women looked at me with expressions I couldn't quite read. Brenda's eyes found mine, and the devastation there made my knees weak. Did you know? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. I couldn't lie to her. Not anymore. Yes. For about 6 weeks. I'm so sorry, Brenda. I should have told you sooner. To my surprise, she didn't explode in anger. She just nodded slowly, like Shed expected as much. Has been lying to everyone for so long. I guess it makes sense you didn't know what to do. Geneva told me everything. The money, the other woman at his work, all of it. Geneva had spread the evidence on the bedside table, and Brenda had clearly spent hours going through it. Her eyes were red and swollen, but there was something else there too. Not just grief, but anger. Good, righteous anger that might just save her. My baby, Brenda said, her hand on her belly. They're worried about my baby. Because I married a monster and my body is trying to reject the stress of what he's done. The doctor said if my blood pressure doesn't stabilize, they might have to deliver early. At 3 months, my baby wouldn't survive. I'm so sorry, I said again, feeling the inadequacy of those words. If I could go back and handle this differently. You did handle it, Brenda interrupted. Maybe not perfectly, but you did what you could in an impossible situation. Mitchell put us all in impossible situations. This is on him, not you. Over the next several hours, the story unfolded in pieces. Mitchell had indeed tried to spin his confession, claiming Simone had pursued him, that the pregnancy was an accident, that Head been planning to tell Brenda but wanted to wait until after the partnership. Head said nothing about Meredith, nothing about the embezzlement, nothing about the systematic theft from Brenda's trust fund. Head tried to control the narrative one more time, but Geneva had demolished his lies within minutes, showing Brenda the real evidence, the timeline proving Mitchell had pursued Simone, the receipts for Meredith, the bank statements showing Head stolen $250,000. Brenda had called Mitchell back, confronted him with the truth, and Head finally broken down and admitted everything. His last words to her, according to Brenda, were, "I never loved you. I never wanted this marriage. You were just a means to an end. 28 years old and my entire adult life was a lie," Brenda said, staring at her hands. "I thought we were building something real. I thought when I got pregnant, we'd finally be the family I'd always dreamed of. But he never wanted me. He just wanted my father's money and connections." Her mother, a formidable woman named Patricia who had always found intimidating, spoke up for the first time. "We're filing for divorce immediately. Full forensic accounting of all marital assets. Criminal charges for the trust fund theft. Mitchell will be lucky if he sees daylight before he's 50. "What about the firm?" I asked. "The ethics committee meeting is Monday morning," Geneva said. "With the embezzlement evidence, he'll be terminated immediately. The district attorney will file charges by end of week. Mitchell's legal career is over. His reputation is destroyed. Everything he built his identity on is gone." I waited for satisfaction, but all I felt was tired. And Simone. Her parents arrived this morning. They're moving her back to Oregon next week. She'll have the baby there, with family support. She's already hired a lawyer to establish paternity and pursue child support, though there won't be much money left after Mitchell's legal fees and restitution payments. And Meredith terminated the pregnancy yesterday, requested and received a transfer to the Los Angeles office. She'll start over somewhere Mitchell's scandal hasn't reached. 3 women, 3 completely different outcomes, all stemming from the same source of poison. Brenda's monitors beeped steadily, tracking her blood pressure as it slowly stabilized. Her baby was still alive, still fighting, hanging on despite the trauma reverberating through Brenda's body. "I need to ask you something," Brenda said, looking at me directly. "I know about the country house baby, about Autumn. That's your grandchild. Are you going to have a relationship with her?" The question caught me off guard. "I don't know. I haven't thought that far ahead." "You should," Brenda said. "That baby didn't ask to be born into this disaster. She deserves to know her grandmother, even if her father is a criminal." "And my baby," her voice caught. "My baby will have a half-sister. Maybe someday, when this isn't so raw, they should know each other. Not for Mitchell's sake, for theirs." The generosity of that statement, from a woman who'd been so thoroughly betrayed, made tears spring to my eyes. "You're a better person than my son ever deserved." "I loved him," Brenda said simply, "or I loved who I thought he was. It's going to take me a long time to reconcile the man I married with the man who did all this. But my baby deserves better than to grow up marinated in bitterness and hatred. So yes, someday, I hope the children can know each other. Not now, not soon, but someday." The monitor alarm went off, Brenda's blood pressure spiking again. Nurses rushed in, and I was ushered out along with everyone else. Geneva caught my arm in the hallway. "Mitchell was arrested an hour ago. The firm called the police when they discovered he'd been trying to access client accounts this morning, probably trying to steal more money to pay for lawyers. Hez in custody. Bail hearing is Monday." Justice, I thought. After all the lies and manipulation and betrayal, actual legal consequences. It should have felt better than it did. "Has he called you?" Geneva asked. 17 times. I haven't answered. My son, sitting in a jail cell, probably scared and angry and still not understanding how his choices had led him to this moment. Part of me wanted to go to him, the mother's instinct to protect her child overwhelming every rational thought, but a larger part knew that going to him now would just enable him further, would let him think he could talk his way out one more time. Don't. Geneva said, reading my expression. Don't. Go to him. Let him sit with the consequences for once. Let him be uncomfortable and scared. Maybe that's the only way he learns. Over the next few months, Mitchell's world completely disintegrated. He was denied bail due to flight risk, given his resources and the severity of the charges. The firm terminated him, and the Bar Association began disbarment proceedings. He pleaded guilty to embezzlement and fraud as part of a deal that got him 7 years in prison instead of the potential 20 he faced at trial. Brenda's lawyers secured a divorce that gave her virtually everything, and Brenda gave birth to a tiny but healthy baby boy she named Calvin. He spent 6 weeks in the NICU but ultimately thrived, a miracle baby who survived against odds. Simone went back to Oregon and gave birth to Autumn 3 weeks after Mitchell's arrest. I flew out to meet my granddaughter, a beautiful baby girl with Mitchell's eyes and Simona's smile. Holding her, I felt joy and grief tangled together so tightly I couldn't separate them. Joy that this perfect little person existed. Grief that her father would be in prison for most of her childhood, that Shed grow up with the weight of his sins, shadowing her story. I want you in her life, Simone told me as I rocked Autumn. You're her grandmother. What Mitchell did doesn't change that. Are you sure? I understand if you want nothing to do with anyone connected to him. You exposed him. Simone said simply. You could have stayed silent, protected your son, chosen the easy path, but you chose truth instead. That matters. Autumn deserves to know her grandmother who had the courage to do the right thing. I visited Oregon every few months, watching Autumn grow from a tiny infant into a babbling toddler. Simone rebuilt her life slowly, getting a job at a local school, dating eventually, creating stability for herself and her daughter. Mitchell's child support payments were minimal since he was incarcerated, but Simone managed. She was stronger than Shed ever given herself credit for. Brenda and I developed an unlikely friendship. Shed bring Calvin to Philadelphia every few months, and Wed meet for lunch. 2 women trying to process how thoroughly Wed been deceived by someone Wed loved. Calvin grew into a happy baby, his prematurity just a memory as he hit all his milestones. Brenda started dating again eventually, carefully and cautiously, but with hope that she might find real love this time. Do you ever talk to him? She asked me one day over coffee. Calvin was 2, playing with toys at our feet, oblivious to the weight of his origin story. No, I said. He writes me letters from prison. I don't open them. He writes me too. Apologies, explanations, justifications. I don't read them either. My therapist says someday I might need to, for closure. But not yet. Not while I'm still so angry. Do you think you'll ever forgive him? Brenda considered this carefully. I think I'll forgive him for myself eventually. Because carrying this rage is exhausting. But forgive as in, let him back into my life or Calvin's life? No, never. He made his choices. He has to live with them. I thought about Mitchell often, wondering if prison was changing him or just making him more bitter. Part of me hoped he was using the time for genuine reflection, genuine growth, but a larger part suspected he was just angry at being caught, angry at everyone who'd conspired to expose him, seeing himself as the victim of a coordinated attack rather than the architect of his own destruction. Geneva became one of my closest friends, bonding over the shared experience of watching someone Wed trusted reveal themselves as a monster. She and Brenda healed together, sisters united by survival. Meredith sent an email a year after everything exploded, saying she was doing well in Los Angeles, engaged to a good man who knew her whole story and loved her anyway. 3 women, all finding their way forward, all stronger than Mitchell had ever given them credit for. Now, 3 years later, I sit in my living room with photos of both grandchildren on my mantle. Autumn is 3, obsessed with dinosaurs and singing. Calvin is 2.5, cautious but sweet, with Brenda's determination in his eyes. They haven't met yet, but Brenda and I have talked about arranging it, carefully and with therapists involved, when they're both old enough to handle the complicated truth of their connection. Mitchell has 4 years left on his sentence. He'll be released eventually, a disbarred lawyer with a felony record and 2 children who barely know him. I don't know what his life will look like then, if Hell have learned anything, or if Hell just be angry and entitled, blaming everyone but himself. I've made my peace with the fact that I might never know my son again, that the person he became might be permanent rather than temporary. Roger's chair still sits across from mine, empty but somehow still present. I talk to him sometimes, telling him about the grandchildren he never got to meet, about how I tried to live up to the values he taught me, even when it cost me dearly. I think he'd be proud of the choice I made to expose Mitchell rather than protect him. Roger always said that real love means letting people face the consequences of their actions, that shielding someone from accountability is just another form of harm. The story of how I went to my son's country house and discovered his double life has become something I share with other women in support groups, women who've had to make impossible choices about when to tell the truth and when to stay silent. There's no easy answer, I tell them. Every situation is different, every betrayal unique. But I've learned that secrets are poison, that they grow and metastasize until they consume everything. Speaking up was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was also the most necessary. I went to my son's country house in secret, slipped in the back door, and discovered a nightmare, but I walked out a survivor. And in the years since, I've watched the women Mitchell hurt walk out as survivors too, building new lives from the rubble he created. We're stronger than he ever believed possible. We're more resilient than his manipulations could break. And we're teaching the next generation, teaching Autumn and Calvin and the families we've built, that integrity matters, that truth matters, that treating people with respect and honesty is the only foundation on which anything real can be built. My son may be lost to me, but I've gained something unexpected from this tragedy. A community of women who understand survival, who know the cost of speaking truth to power, who've rebuilt themselves into versions stronger than what was broken. We gather sometimes, me and Geneva and Brenda and Simone, and we celebrate our children and our healing and the fact that we made it through the fire, not unscathed, but alive, not unchanged, but unbowed. Have you ever discovered a secret that changed everything? Have you faced an impossible choice between protecting someone you love and exposing a truth that needed to be told? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories about family, betrayal, and the strength we find when we have no choice but to be strong. Share this with someone who needs to hear that speaking the truth, even when it costs you everything, is sometimes the only path to real healing. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that courage isn't fearlessness. Courage is being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. May you all find the strength to choose truth when lies would be easier. Stay strong, stay honest, and take care of yourselves and each other.